Breakker's rage backfires. Heyman gets destroyed. Rollins seizes the moment. Breakker loses control. Rollins punishes Breakker. Heyman's Raw nightmare. Did Bron Breakker just make the biggest mistake of his career by attacking Paul Heyman? Or did Seth Rollins simply do what great veterans always do and take advantage of a situation that somebody else created? Those are the questions WWE fans have been asking ever since Raw came to an explosive conclusion, because what unfolded wasn't just another match. It wasn't just another chapter in an ongoing rivalry. It was one of those moments that instantly changes the conversation and leaves everyone wondering what happens next. And somehow, as always, Paul Heyman found himself right in the middle of the chaos. Now, if you've been watching wrestling for any length of time, you already know that Paul Heyman is not the kind of person who gets involved physically. That's never been his game. Heyman wins battles with his mind. He manipulates situations, pulls strings behind the scenes, and convinces other people to do the fighting for him. That's what has made him one of the most influential figures in wrestling history. He doesn't need to throw punches because his words are usually more dangerous than any move performed inside the ring. But on this particular night, words weren't going to save him. As Raw progressed, there was a strange atmosphere hanging over the show. Everything felt normal on the surface, but underneath it all, there was tension. The kind of tension that wrestling fans immediately recognize. You know those moments when you're watching a show and something just feels off? You can't explain it, but your instincts keep telling you that something huge is about to happen. That's exactly what this felt like. Every stare lasted a little longer. Every interaction seemed to carry extra meaning. It was as if everyone involved knew something was coming, even if they didn't know exactly what. Then came the match between Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker. The contrast between these two stars couldn't have been more obvious. Seth Rollins walked to the ring with the confidence we've come to expect from him. Love him or hate him, Rollins always carries himself like the smartest man in the building. He moves with swagger, talks with confidence, and competes with the belief that he's already one step ahead of everyone else. Meanwhile, Bron Breakker looked like a man who was seconds away from destroying anything that got in his path. The intensity was written all over his face. Every movement looked aggressive. Every step seemed heavier than usual. He didn't look focused on winning a wrestling match. He looked focused on hurting somebody. And honestly, that's what made this situation so dangerous. When the match started, things appeared relatively normal. The two competitors went at each other with the kind of intensity fans expected. The crowd was engaged. The action was physical. Everything seemed to be following the script of a hard-fought WWE match. But if you watched closely, there were signs that something else was happening. Bron Breakker's frustration kept growing. You could see it in his expressions. You could see it in the way he reacted to every setback. It felt like he was carrying more anger than usual, and that anger was slowly building towards something explosive. At ringside stood Paul Heyman, watching everything unfold. As always, Heyman looked calm. That's one of the most fascinating things about him. No matter how chaotic a situation becomes, he somehow manages to look comfortable. The arena could be falling apart around him, and he'd probably still look like he was negotiating a business deal. It's honestly kind of impressive. The man has built an entire career on staying composed while everyone else loses control. Unfortunately for him, composure wasn't enough to save him this time. As the match continued, the atmosphere inside the arena changed. Fans could sense it. The energy shifted. The crowd became louder. The anticipation grew stronger. People weren't just watching anymore. They were waiting. Waiting for something. Waiting for the moment when all that tension would finally explode. And then it happened. Bron Breakker snapped. There was no hesitation. No warning. No second thoughts. One moment Paul Heyman was standing at ringside, and the next moment he was being absolutely obliterated by a spear. The impact was shocking. The reaction inside the arena was even bigger. The crowd erupted instantly. fans jumped to their feet. Commentary completely lost control. Social media probably exploded within seconds. It was the kind of moment that forces everyone to stop whatever they're doing because they can't believe what they just witnessed. And let's be honest. Seeing Paul Heyman get speared isn't exactly an everyday occurrence. This wasn't some random manager taking a bump. This was Paul Heyman. The same Paul Heyman who has stood beside some of the biggest names in wrestling history. The same Paul Heyman who has manipulated countless situations to his advantage. The same Paul Heyman who always seems to have a backup plan. Yet in that moment, none of those plans mattered. He was down. He was hurt. And he was completely helpless. The visual alone was enough to make headlines, but what happened afterward was arguably even more important. Because while everyone inside the building was focused on Paul Heyman, Seth Rollins was focused on something else entirely. Winning. That's what separates great competitors from everyone else. Great competitors recognize opportunities the second they appear. While Bron Breakker was consumed by emotion, Seth Rollins remained focused. While Breakker was making a statement, Rollins was making calculations. While everyone else was staring at the aftermath of the spear, Rollins was thinking about how to capitalize on the situation. And that's exactly what he did. Bron Breakker allowed his emotions to take control. He achieved the destruction he wanted, but in the process, he lost sight of the actual objective. Seth Rollins didn't make that mistake. He stayed locked in. He stayed disciplined. And when the opportunity presented itself, he took advantage without hesitation. The result was simple. Seth Rollins walked away with the victory. For Breakker, it was a painful lesson. Sometimes passion can be your greatest strength. Other times it can become your biggest weakness. The same intensity that makes Bron Breakker such a dangerous competitor may have cost him the match. He was so focused on sending a message that he forgot about securing the win. Meanwhile, Rollins did exactly what experienced veterans are supposed to do. He adapted. He survived. And ultimately, he punished his opponent for losing control. That's why the aftermath of this situation is so fascinating. The match may be over, but the story feels far from finished. After all, we're talking about Paul Heyman. History has shown that crossing Paul Heyman rarely comes without consequences. How many people have attacked him, embarrassed him, or humiliated him and then simply moved on without repercussions? Not many. The man always finds a way back into the picture. He always finds a way to influence events. He always finds a way to make people regret underestimating him. And now Bron Breakker has publicly taken him out in front of the entire WWE universe. That's not the kind of thing that gets forgotten. In fact, it might only be the beginning. And if you're enjoying this discussion so far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because the fallout from this situation could become one of the most interesting stories on Raw. When you really think about it, this entire segment perfectly highlighted the personalities of everyone involved. Bron Breakker showed exactly who he is. He's